A very good morning to all, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start, can we give the organizer a big round of applause, please? Thank you very much. My name is CK. I'm so happy to be here at this seminar and very happy to see everybody here for the empowering of your life. Now, this afternoon, we have this empowering of your life, and we will be having some talks that actually benefits you. Yeah. At the same time, we'd like to highlight to everybody, during the registration, you're given two sets of things. One set contains a feedback form to be filled up and returned after the seminar, together with a $5 spring voucher, and you can use the voucher to redeem for the upcoming seminar and subscription to 18 issues of Prime magazine. The second set contains an indemnity form that is used for flu vaccine, all right, a ticket number and two brochures on pneumococcal vaccination, and would like to invite you to fill up the indemnity form and pass it to them during the vaccination to the nurses. Yeah. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to welcome everybody to this seminar. This is the Empowering Your Life seminar, and I would like to invite on stage, ladies and gentlemen, CEO of NTUC FairPrice, Mr. Seah Kian Peng, to speak. To say a few words. Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Seah.
A very good Sunday afternoon to all. I think there are some who are our Indian colleagues. I want to wish them a happy Deepavali. Our distinguished speakers and those on the panel, ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's Empowering Your Life seminar. This is the second year that we are organizing and supporting this event, and I'm very happy to be, like last year, to join everyone here this afternoon. The seminar is designed to help all of us age gracefully, to help all of us equip ourselves with a better understanding of the various health conditions that may come with aging. As a very mature society, Singapore's population is aging rapidly. In fact, the number of seniors has more than doubled since the turn of the century, and it is expected to double again by 2030. So from the current 480,000 seniors, by 2030, we will have close to 1 million seniors, 900,000 seniors. So with such a large proportion of seniors growing rapidly in Singapore, it is important to address the issues of graceful aging and adopting a healthy lifestyle as we approach our silver years. So I was very happy just now when I came a little bit earlier. I also went for my immunization. And as I was seated there, I looked across. Quite a few of you were also waiting for your immunization. One of them was also wearing the Health Promotion Board health tracker, which means I know that she is, participating and also adopting this very active and healthy routine, trying to make sure that we walk at least 10,000 steps a day. So these are things which, again, as we were talking earlier with some of my other colleagues, we were saying that actually a lot of things we need to do now so that going forward, it will be a bit easier. And this is why NTUC FairPrice have been actively collaborating with partners like SCA Hygiene Singapore for the second year to organize this seminar for the elderly and their caregivers. We also believe in taking the lead to empower our silver population to age gracefully through various initiatives. To cater to the elderly, FairPrice have introduced senior-friendly features at our stores. They include installing call assist buttons and also adjusting the shelf heights for easy reach. Seniors and Pioneer Generation members also enjoy special discounts when they shop with us on Mondays and Tuesdays. Beyond providing better value, we believe that these initiatives also encourage seniors to come out from their homes and engage with the community while shopping. So indeed, on Monday and Tuesdays, our stores are usually quite busy. A lot of people, which is a good sign from both a business and social point of view. So from an employer's perspective, FairPrice adopts a flexible work arrangement policy, and we employ quite a lot of workers who are above 60 years of age. If I were to tell you that FairPrice, we have a workforce of about 10,000 people, how many do you think are more than 60 years old? How many percent? Okay, about 15, more than 15%. In other words, we have more than 1,500 of our staff who are more than 60 years old. And if I now maybe lower it to 50 years and above, like me, I'm more than 50 years old. 40% of FairPrice staff are more than 50 years old. So quite a lot of us who are, and I think it's a reflection also of the Singaporean society. So staying active, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and continuing engaging family, friends, and the community is a key to aging gracefully. As Henry Ford, the famous industrialist and founder of the Ford Motor Company, once said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. But anyone who keeps learning stays young. I think it's very true. So today we want to challenge all of us, all of you, to be 20 again as we embark on an ongoing journey to learn and to equip ourselves with useful knowledge and tips to help us along as we age. I was again sharing with some of my colleagues that for me, my parents stay with me. They are all more than 80 years old now. Unfortunately, I think they didn't have the benefit of going through all this. Otherwise, I think things would be easier. But it also means a lot of challenges from the caregivers. The caregivers would be my wife, my sisters, the rest of my siblings, all helping out to look after my mom and dad. So in conclusion, I would like to thank our partners from SCA Hygiene Singapore for making this program possible, and also to all the speakers and panelists for your time and effort in sharing your expert knowledge. To all our participants, thank you for attending, and I wish you an empowering and fulfilling journey in the silver years. Thank you very much, and have a great Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, sir. And before we start, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you the organizers of today's seminar, TENA and PRIME. TENA is a registered trademark of SCA Group under license from SCA Hygiene Products AB. TENA is marketed in Singapore by SCA Hygiene Singapore Private Limited. SCA Hygiene Singapore is part of Vinta Group, one of the largest companies of hygiene products in Asia. Vinta has about 10,000 employees with sales conducted under many well-known brands such as Libres and Drypers, I beg your pardon. SCA Group, a leading global hygiene products company from Europe, is the majority shareholder of Vinta. And now I would like to introduce you to PRIME. PRIME, a health and lifestyle magazine, is brought to you by Spring Publishing. PRIME brings you health, nutrition, and lifestyle information bi-monthly. Today, they hope to empower you with knowledge and understanding of the following topics. What do we have for the seminar topics today is diabetes management and Nocturia, menopause from a TCM perspective, as well as urinary incontinence. Lastly, also, we do have this continuing on the road to happiness, mental wellness, and active aging. So before we start, I would like to ask our friends here, do you have some urge, like myself, one night before I drink too much water, the whole night I have to go to the toilet for 4 or 5 times. Are you experiencing that? Put up your hand, everybody. Put up your hand. Don't be shy, I also like that. Yeah, big or small. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to have this talk, and this talk is by Dr. Abel So. Dr. Abel So graduated from National University of Singapore in 2000. He obtained membership of the Royal Colleges of Physicians of the United Kingdom in 2006. After pursuing advanced specialist training in endocrinology, he obtained a specialist accreditation in 2010. The same year, he was awarded the Sing Health HMDP Fellowship in Diabetes in Pregnancy at Joslin Diabetes Center of US of A. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Aber So, Dr. So also once served as adjunct assistant professor in medicine at NUS Graduate Medical School and clinical senior lecturer at the Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine in NUS. So with this, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite on stage Dr. So for this insight talk. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Spring, for inviting me to speak on this topic of diabetes management and nocturia. So I think, without further ado, let's talk about what I'm going to say this afternoon. So just two main topics for me this afternoon. Firstly, I will touch on nocturia, what nocturia is, and then the next big section of my talk, I will be touching on diabetes mellitus. So what is nocturia? So I think just now he has quite succinctly mentioned that nocturia is the need for a person to wake up and pass urine at night. So it is different from another term which I think some of you may have heard about it when you look after kids, which is enuresis. So enuresis is urine that is passed unintentionally during sleep. So enuresis happens more often in children, whereas nocturia tend to happen in adults. So of course, we need to define what is normal and what is abnormal. So normal frequency of passing urine at night is about minimum one time waking up at night to pass urine. So when you wake up more than one time to pass urine at night, it is abnormal and it is considered nocturia. So if you wake up 3 to 4 times at night, definitely you have nocturia. So how common is nocturia? So about 58 to 66% of individuals who are aged 50 to 59 years, as well as 72 to 91% of individuals who are aged 80 years of age have nocturia in one study that was done. In another study, which is a national survey that was conducted by telephone of 5,000 plus community-based adults, 31% of them reported waking up at least one time at night to pass urine, and 14% reported waking up at least twice to pass urine at night. And studies in Japan and Austria have found rates of 28.5 to 11.3% respectively. So you can see that the numbers varies, and it basically depends on the age of the individuals. You can see from the first study that was done that, the older you are, the percentage of people having nocturia actually increases. So before we touch on the causes of nocturia, let's talk about what nocturia can do to a person. So nocturia can affect, first of all, the quantity and the quality of sleep of a person. So if you sleep very little, then there's increased risk that you may be involved in a traffic accident if you're driving. You will have reduced concentration, memory, and cognitive function during the daytime, and certainly you will have reduced daytime energy level as well. So another aspect that nocturia does to a person is it reduces the quality of life of a person. So there will be reduced performance because of poor sleep, and there will be also prolonged reaction time, increased risk of cardiovascular risk factors because of poor sleep. So the last impact of nocturia is the impact on family members. So nocturia can disrupt the sleep patterns of other family members if you are sleeping with you, and if you frequently wake up at night to pass urine, so you can actually disturb your family members' sleep as well. So let's now talk about what are the causes of nocturia. So the most common cause of nocturia is drinking too much fluids, especially in the evening time. So a lot of us, we would drink water several times of the day, but if an individual drinks water too much in the evening time, then there's an increased chance that you will end up waking up at night to pass urine. And of course, how many times you wake up at night depends on how much you drink as well. So this is not really a pathological cause of nocturia. So the next common reason is polyuria. So polyuria is defined as passing urine more often than normal. So there are three common reasons for a person to pass urine very commonly. And the top of the list would be diabetes mellitus, which is actually high blood sugar level. All right. So there is another much rarer condition called diabetes insipidus, which is actually having an insufficient hormone for conserving water in the body. And last but not least, high blood calcium level can also rarely cause polyuria. So the third category is nocturnal polyuria, which means that polyuria that only happens at night. So this group of individuals may have heart failure, or you may have a condition called sleep apnea, which means that you actually have difficulty breathing in the middle of sleep. Or patients with kidney failure can also have nocturnal polyuria as well. So the last category are people with bladder problems. So it can be any form of bladder problem, ranging from obstruction of the bladder, overactivity of the bladder muscle, infection, inflammation affecting the urinary bladder, or even in men with prostate enlargement also, this group of individuals can present with nocturia. So the main bulk of what I'm going to talk about next will be focused on the main cause of polyuria, which is diabetes mellitus. So what is diabetes mellitus? So in order to help us to understand what diabetes mellitus is about, we have to, first of all, take a step back and look at how our body processes and stores stores sugar, which is glucose. So how does sugar or glucose enter the cells in our body? So when we consume food, and usually food that contains carbohydrate, when the food is digested, it will form sugar or glucose. But the sugar or the glucose cannot enter the cell effectively unless there is a key which needs to be present before the sugar can actually enter the cell. So the pancreas, which is the organ that is quite in close proximity to the liver, is the organ that actually produces this key. So the pancreas makes a hormone called insulin, which is the key that can help glucose enter the cell. So with the presence of insulin, glucose can then enter the cell to be stored in the cell and to be used by the cell. So what happens in diabetes is that there is lack of insulin. So with lack of insulin, the glucose cannot effectively enter the cell and the glucose stays in the bloodstream, so resulting in higher concentration of blood sugar. So this is basically what diabetes is about, and there are three types of diabetes. Okay, so I will touch on the first two types first. So type 1 diabetes is a condition where there is no insulin production at all from the pancreas. All right. Whereas type 2 diabetes, there is less insulin being produced by the pancreas, and there's also this condition called insulin resistance, which means that the body is unable to use glucose properly because of the resistance to the effect of insulin. And this usually happens in people who are overweight or obese. So the proportion of people who have diabetes, about 90% of them will have type 2 diabetes, and about 10% would have type 1 diabetes. So I will just touch very briefly on what type 1 diabetes is, because it is something that you may not see very often. So type 1 diabetes accounts for 10% of all cases of diabetes. So as I mentioned earlier, there is no insulin production from the pancreas at all. And this condition usually happens in children and adolescents, although very rarely it can happen in adults as well. So because of the fact that there is no insulin being produced by the pancreas, these individuals with type 1 diabetes would need lifelong insulin injections. So it's something that is not very pleasant for them to do. So type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, accounts for at least 90% of all cases of diabetes. And it is due to the lack of insulin production from the pancreas. So the insulin still produces, the pancreas still produces some amount of insulin, but it is not sufficient to keep the blood sugar level normal. And it is also due to the presence of insulin resistance. So this type of diabetes occurs mostly in individuals who are more than 40 years of age. And it may remain undetected for years. So I'll touch on some of the symptoms of diabetes later. So the third type of diabetes is type of diabetes that happens only in women who are pregnant. So it's called gestational diabetes. So it's diabetes which usually happens in the second trimester of pregnancy. So the blood sugar level rises, and usually this group of women, most of the women with gestational diabetes can be treated with just dietary changes alone. So this diabetes normally would disappear after delivery of the baby, but because of the fact that the woman has gestational diabetes, their risk of future type 2 diabetes is increased. And having higher blood sugar level during pregnancy may pose potential risk to the unborn baby as well. So let's now touch on what are the symptoms of diabetes. So the symptoms of diabetes would include, first of all, always feeling tired. Secondly, frequent urination, as I've talked about earlier, nocturia as well. And feeling thirsty all the time. Having sudden weight loss can be one of the signs and symptoms of a person developing diabetes. Having blurry vision may be one of the symptoms as well. Feeling always hungry. Having wounds that don't heal well may be a sign of diabetes. Having numbness or tingling in the hands and feet as well. So for men, men can develop sexual problems, and in women can have more frequent infection of the genital. So unfortunately, in some cases, there are no symptoms at all. So many of these people with no symptoms of diabetes can actually live for months or even years without knowing that they have the disease. And type 2 diabetes comes on so gradually that the symptoms may not even be recognized at all, because the symptoms may develop so slowly and so gradually that the individual may not even realize that they are actually having the symptoms of diabetes. So what are the risk factors for someone to develop type 2 diabetes? So first of all, the most important thing is family history. So if you have any first-degree family member who has got type 2 diabetes, then your risk of diabetes is actually increased already. All right. So the second risk factor is lack of exercise. So an increasingly sedentary lifestyle actually predisposes someone to develop diabetes. Having unhealthy eating also puts a person at risk of developing diabetes, and being overweight or obese also increases the risk of diabetes in an individual. So before we talk about the management of diabetes, I want to just highlight what are the complications of diabetes, because these are the problems of diabetes that we always want to avoid individuals from having when an individual is found to have diabetes and is controlling his or her diabetes. So first of all, let's talk about diabetic eye disease. So diabetic eye disease is the leading cause of blindness worldwide. High blood sugar may damage the tiny blood vessels of the retina, which is the back of the eye. And the weakened vessels may start to leak blood, leading to blurred vision and possibly blindness. So you can see here from the picture, on the left-hand side is a normal eye with normal blood vessels at the back of the eye. And the one on the right is someone with diabetic eye disease with leaky blood vessels. So the second complication is diabetic kidney disease, which I think some of you would be familiar with. So diabetes is the leading cause of kidney failure in many countries. And high blood sugar over time may damage the kidney, and as a result, protein will leak out into the urine, and over time, waste products will build up in the body. So you can see from the picture on the right, the healthy kidney would not leak protein, but the kidney that has damaged by diabetes will start to leak protein into the urine. And after many years of kidney disease, the kidney will fail, and the individual may require dialysis. So the next complication is heart disease. High blood sugar may damage the blood vessels and increase a person's blood pressure. And having too much fat and cholesterol in the blood vessels can actually reduce or block blood flow to the heart. So you can see from the picture on the right, the topmost blood vessel is actually normal looking, and the second one, there's already some deposits at the side of the blood vessel wall, and the third is when the entire blood vessel is actually blocked with a blood clot there. So this will lead to a heart attack. So the last complication that I want to touch on will be diabetic nerve disease. So high blood sugar level may damage the blood vessels of the nerves, and damaged nerves will then not send pain signals, and one may not feel a callus or a blister on the feet. So having poor blood flow may also cause the callus or the blister to become infected, and an infection would lead to an ulcer and eventually possibly the need for foot or leg amputation. So I think many of us would have come across people in the community who have got their legs amputated, and I can tell you that many of them have diabetes. All right. So in the next section, I'm going to touch on how do we diagnose diabetes. So you can see from the picture here that this picture shows someone drawing blood from another individual. So unfortunately, the only way that we can diagnose diabetes is if we do a blood test. So the first blood test is a fasting blood glucose level. So fasting means that you do not have anything to eat or drink except water for at least 8 hours before the test. So this means that the test is usually done first thing in the morning before breakfast. And diabetes is diagnosed when you have a blood sugar level of greater or equals to 7.0 millimoles. So you can see normal is less than 6.1 fasting. So between 6.1 to 6.9 is the condition called pre-diabetes, which I will touch on in my subsequent slides. And having a fasting sugar of more than 7.0 or higher will mean that you have got diabetes. So the second test that we can do to diagnose diabetes is a test called oral glucose tolerance test. So what is this test about? This is a 2-hour test that checks an individual's blood sugar level before as well as 2 hours after he or she has drank a special sweet drink. So the test tells us how a person's body processes glucose. And diabetes is diagnosed when you have a 2-hour blood glucose level of greater than or equals to 11.1 millimoles per liter. And the last test that I want to touch on is a test called HbA1c. So HbA1c measures an individual's average blood glucose over the past 2 to 3 month period. So the advantage of doing HbA1c to diagnose diabetes is that there is no need to fast and there's no need to drink any special drink. So diabetes can be diagnosed if you have a HbA1c of greater than or equals to 6.5%. And having a HbA1c of 5.7 to 6.4% would categorize someone as having pre-diabetes. So what is pre-diabetes? So pre-diabetes is a condition that happens before diabetes. So before anyone develops type 2 diabetes, they will almost always have prediabetes. And blood sugar levels that are higher than normal but not high enough yet to be diagnosed as diabetes would categorize someone as prediabetes. So doctors would sometimes refer to prediabetes as either impaired glucose tolerance or impaired fasting glucose. The important thing about prediabetes is that once you have got prediabetes, it means that your risk of developing type 2 diabetes eventually is actually greatly increased. But it is important that you take note of this because not everyone with prediabetes would automatically develop type 2 diabetes. For some people with prediabetes, early treatment can actually return blood sugar level back into the normal range. So how do you prevent diabetes if you have been diagnosed with prediabetes? So research shows that you can lower your risk of type 2 diabetes by close to 60% if you lose 7% of your body weight, which is 6 to 7 kilograms if you weigh 90 kilograms. If you exercise moderately, doing exercises like brisk walking, 30 minutes a day, 5 days of a week. And it is important to understand that you do not need to get to your ideal body weight just to prevent diabetes. Because for someone who is overweight or obese, your ideal body weight may be actually quite low and it may seem quite difficult to achieve. But even losing 3 to 5 kilograms of weight can make a huge difference where blood sugar is concerned. So I'm going to touch on how do we manage diabetes first. Just a few slides. So the management of diabetes, there are 3 aspects. So there's the dietary aspect, the exercise aspect, as well as the medication aspect. So in the center portion is blood sugar monitoring, which really depends on the type of diabetes that you have, as well as the intensity of your treatment for the doctors to recommend whether or not you need to go on blood sugar monitoring. So let's talk about diet first. So this is the recommended dietary composition for someone who has got diabetes. So of course, this is not something that can be easily sort of worked out unless you meet with a nutritionist or a dietitian to look at your diet and to break out which portion of your diet contains carbohydrate, which portion contains protein, and which are the portions that contains fat. So the long and short of it is that you need to reduce overall carbohydrate intake slightly and increase protein intake. And of course, in order to reduce a person's risk of developing heart disease, saturated fat intake should be reduced as well. So for exercise, the recommended level of exercise for someone with diabetes is at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise. So this would include brisk walking, jogging, running, swimming, right, or cycling. And the third management of diabetes would be medications. So there are tablet medications that an individual can take. There are also insulin injections as well. So I'll touch a little bit about medications for the treatment of diabetes. So for someone who has got type 2 diabetes, apart from having lack of insulin production and insulin resistance, there are other reasons for the blood sugar level to be high. So some of these reasons were only recently discovered over the past 5 to 10 years. So currently in the market, there are at least 5 types of tablet medications that are available for the treatment of type 2 diabetes. An important thing to note is that we know that for someone with type 2 diabetes, his or her insulin production will decrease over the years as the disease duration increases. So this means that up to 40% of individuals may require insulin injection by the time they have 10 years of type 2 diabetes. So this is something that we always try to help our patients to understand, because a lot of them, when we tell them that they need insulin injection, they don't quite understand why, and sometimes they blame themselves, sometimes they blame others, of course. So the next section I want to touch on is how do you prevent diabetes if you don't have diabetes yet? So diabetes prevention involves these 5 aspects. Number 1, you should be monitoring and lowering your blood pressure and your blood cholesterol level. If you have a slightly high blood pressure or higher blood pressure, and if you have high cholesterol level, you should be monitoring and lowering your risk of these 2 conditions. The second thing will be to eat a healthy diet. So this means eating less fat, more fiber, more whole grains, more vegetables, fruits, and lean meat as well. The third aspect is physical activity. So again, 30 minutes of activity per day, 5 days a week, which means 150 minutes per week would help lower your risk of developing diabetes by close to 60%. The fourth aspect is to manage your weight and your body mass index. So if you are already overweight or obese, just by eating a healthier diet, eating less calories, as well as doing more physical activity, doing more exercise, you can actually help to improve your weight and reduce your risk of developing diabetes. Last but not least, smoking. If you are smoking currently, you should start to reduce your smoking and quit your smoking eventually. So every one of us can make a change for life. So we should start making changes starting from today. So the next section that I want to touch on is some of the myths and facts about diabetes. So the myth number 1 is eating too much sugar causes diabetes. True or false? Who says true? Raise your hand. Okay. Who says false? Who says you don't know? Okay. Well, unfortunately, the answer is not so straightforward and not so simple. Yeah. So we know for type 1 diabetes, it is caused by genetics as well as unknown factors that trigger the onset of the disease. Type 2 diabetes is also caused by genetics, but it is also influenced by lifestyle factors as well. So being overweight increases an individual's risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And having a diet that is high in calories from any source can contribute to weight gain and thus increasing an individual's risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So the only piece of evidence that we have from research that confirms the link between sugar and diabetes is actually sugary drinks. So research has shown that drinking sugary drinks is linked with type 2 diabetes. So just 1 can a day of any soft drink would increase your chance of developing diabetes by 20%. So that's quite a high percentage actually. So of course, in order to reduce your risk of developing diabetes, then many organizations have advocated that you reduce or avoid intake of sugar-sweetened beverages such as regular soft drinks, fruit drinks, fruit punches, energy drinks, and sports drinks like 100 Plus, H2O, sweet teas like Gong Cha, and other sugary drinks as well. Yeah. So just to put numbers in perspective, 1 can of regular soft drink usually has about 150 calories. So just drinking 1 can of soft drink will give you 150 calories and 40 grams of carbohydrate. So 40 grams of carbohydrate is the same amount of carbohydrates in 10 teaspoons of sugar. So it's equivalent to drinking 10 teaspoons of sugar actually, right? So other kinds of fruit punch or sugar drinks may have less calories, but certainly still quite a high amount of carbohydrate content as well. So the take-home message is that you should try to reduce your intake of sugar-sweetened beverages if you are drinking a lot at this point in time, so that you reduce your risk of developing diabetes. So myth number 2. if you are overweight or obese, you will eventually develop type 2 diabetes. True or false? Okay. I think that the way I phrase the myth is you'll be false. So the answer is false, because being overweight is a risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes, which I've mentioned in many of my slides earlier. But there are other risk factors involved as well. So this include family history, ethnicity, and age. And the truth is that many people who are overweight never develop type 2 diabetes. And there are also many people with type 2 diabetes who are at normal weight or only moderately overweight. So the weight issue, we know that being overweight or obese increases your risk of developing diabetes, but it doesn't mean that you will eventually develop diabetes. So the third myth is diabetes is not that serious of a disease. True or false? Okay. So the answer is false, because you know that the Ministry of Health is already taking very concrete steps to reduce our nation's prevalence of diabetes. Diabetes itself causes more death in a year than breast cancer and AIDS combined. So that's really quite a lot of deaths. And we know that an individual having diabetes would have double the chance of having a heart attack compared to someone who doesn't have diabetes. But the good news, of course, is that having good diabetes control can reduce your risk of developing diabetes complications. So the last myth is diabetes can be cured. True or false? Okay, so I see some shaking of heads, which is very good. Yeah. Unfortunately, currently there is no cure for diabetes. So the cure for diabetes has been sought after for years, and of course right now the researchers are still working on finding a cure for diabetes, but up to this point in time there is no cure for diabetes. So there has been some speculation about the role of bariatric or weight loss surgery in curing type 2 diabetes. So people who are overweight or obese who goes for weight loss surgery, they would have their diabetes sort of cured. But the link between surgery and the cure of diabetes hasn't been quite established yet. And we know that even if an individual's blood sugar level is rendered normal after the surgery, if he or she gains weight again in the later part of his or her life, then the blood sugar level will start to rise again. So it is not a permanent cure for diabetes per se. Yeah. So in conclusion, diabetes mellitus is a condition of high blood sugar level that can cause a person to pass urine more often and certainly cause nocturia. So the most important reason for diabetes in an individual with type 2 diabetes is that there is lack of insulin production from the pancreas. Poor blood sugar control over time can lead to complications such as increased risk of developing eye disease, kidney disease, increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and even nerve damage as well. But the important point to note is that with proper management of an individual's blood sugar level, many individuals with diabetes can lead normal and healthy lives. All right. So with that, I thank you.
Right, before we invite Dr. So to take your seat, would you like any questions from the floor? You can raise up your hand, we can pass the mic to you. Yeah. Any question? Don't worry, it's free of charge. There's one over there.
Recently, I've heard that white rice is contributing a lot to these diabetes. How true is it, and how much we can do to prevent it?
I know I will definitely have someone asking this question today. All right. So the reason why white rice is in the spotlight is actually because we as Asians eat a lot of rice. So a lot of the Asian countries around us also eat rice as the main staple of our diet as well. And we know that rice is a kind of food that contains a lot of carbohydrate. So of course, if you take a lot of carbohydrate-rich food, it doesn't have to be rice. It can be noodles, it can be pasta, it can be bread, or even eating a lot of fruits as well. All this food will actually increase an individual's blood sugar level. So, of course, being the main staple of our diet, rice is unfortunately the one that is being talked about most often. So, white rice does contain a lot of carbohydrate, but of course, the important thing about white rice consumption is that you need to reduce your intake of rice if you have diabetes. If you have pre-diabetes, you should also start to reduce your intake of rice or even change the type of rice that you take. So, of course, in this issue, there has been talk about changing to other types of rice, such as brown rice, which is absorbed a little bit slower, so it actually doesn't give rise to a huge rise in your blood sugar level after you have consumed the rice. So a lot of people would come to me saying that, oh, I should stop eating rice. Then I ask them, then what should you be eating then? Then maybe I should eat more noodles. Noodles is the same. Yeah. If you take noodles, more noodles is equivalent to eating more rice as well. So of course, the important thing to note is that any individual will need some form of carbohydrate. So people who go on zero-carb diet, usually they will lose weight, of course, but many of them cannot sustain a low-carb diet for a long time because carbohydrate is the main energy-producing food in our diet. So reducing the amount of carbohydrate that you take every day will definitely help to control your blood sugar level better. Yeah, but it is not necessary to completely cut out carbohydrate from your diet altogether, because you will find that you'll become more tired and more lethargic if you totally cut out carbohydrate from your diet. Yeah. Hope that answers the question.
There's a question there. Yeah, actually, Dr. So, very true. Yeah, I tried to cut off carbo, right? I told myself, don't eat rice, never mind, I eat noodle. They're still the same size.
Excuse me. Is there any, can you recommend any food or to increase food or fruit to increase our resistance to diabetes? I heard this guava can help you to fight diabetes. So I'm wondering whether it's true or not.
Where do you listen this from? From our neighbors, right?
Okay. So, as to fruits, I am currently not aware of any fruit. I haven't even heard of guava being a fruit that will actually help to fight diabetes. But there are certain kind of food stuff that has been studied, that has been shown in research to reduce blood sugar slightly. So this would include foods like bitter gourd, cinnamon, yeah, and certain kinds of herbs as well, which they are. So taking this would help to reduce blood sugar slightly, but of course, if you do not have diabetes yet, or if you have pre-diabetes, and if you want to consume such food substances, certainly you can go ahead and do that. But for someone who has got diabetes already, usually most of the time, unless your diabetes is mild, which means that you can actually still keep it normal with maybe consumption of these food substances, most of the patients with diabetes do require medication to help with their blood sugar control. Yes.
Next question.
Yes.
Can you stand up so that we can see you?
From the medical point of view, I understand insulin is the key to diabetic problems. So from there, the pancreas is the one that creates insulin. Can there be any factors that we can help to strengthen the pancreas, like ordinary food intake or medical point of view, anything like that? Then, diabetic level can be lowered.
Okay, that's a very good question. So we know from research that there's only one thing that helps with the deterioration of insulin production from the pancreas. So this factor is actually good blood sugar control. Because high blood sugar level actually harms the pancreas more over the years, and it actually helps to rapidly deteriorate the insulin production of the pancreas over time. So unfortunately, there are no sort of treatment currently available that can sort of improve the insulin production of the pancreas at this point in time. Yeah. So a lot of it is due to genetics and due to lifestyle factors. Certainly improving your lifestyle, exercising more, eating more healthily would actually help to reduce the rate of deterioration of insulin production from the pancreas as well.
Let's have another 2 more questions.
I heard about this control of carbohydrates. What about oil and fatty foods? I read about this topic about for diabetic, you have to control not only the carbohydrate, also the fats as well.
Yeah. So I think I showed in my slide just now that where the management of diabetes is concerned, for individuals with diabetes, not only you need to control the amount of carbohydrate that you're taking every day, you should also reduce your intake of saturated fat as well as high cholesterol food as well. And the reason for that is because there is another factor that actually may worsen the insulin production from the pancreas, which is actually having high levels of fat in the body. So an individual may have higher levels of this is a particular portion of our cholesterol. It's called triglycerides. So having higher levels of triglyceride in the body, which is usually contributed by eating oily foods, would actually also reduce insulin production from the pancreas. So definitely for someone with diabetes or even with pre-diabetes, you should actually reduce your intake of high cholesterol containing food and oily food.
Let's have the last question. Anyone from the floor? Yeah, this gentleman over here. Over here. No, I come. It's quite far for you. She got to take a bus, huh? So I come here faster.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just saw a lot of advertisement on this sugar blocker tea. Well, this commercial product actually helps.
Okay. So sugar blocker tea is actually sold in NTUC fair price. Yeah. So it is, it's actually one of the products that can help to lower blood sugar slightly. Yeah, so the mechanism, of course, we don't quite understand why, but we know that it can. So that's why it's being sold as a product. So for some of my patients with diabetes, they want to take it. If they don't mind taking it long term, they can. It will definitely help with their blood sugar control. Yeah. So of course, for someone with pre-diabetes, then of course you should be considering taking such products if you can afford it to bring down your blood sugar level as well.
Yeah, with this, let's give a round of applause to thank Doctor for the insights. I would like to present you a token of precision for sharing with us all these important facts. Yeah, all these are very scary, but very good. Thank you, sir.